I am exactly where I need to be in this moment. I am in complete harmony with those around me who share this moment with me. I contribute only truth and love to those around me. I am being used as a beacon of light to transmit God's divine purpose to others. I will bring peace to this moment. Now let there be truth, love, light, and peace. When one meanders about her tedious life in oblivion, she is likened to being asleep. Yet, there are moments in such a life that are requisite in her awakening. These moments are also known as visions, and if one can maintain vigilance during these moments, one may begin to unravel the tightly woven thread of her life's purpose. And of course, as with anything in life, when one first awakens to a new beginning, she must strengthen her muscles of awareness. This gets easier with time, and when one strengthens a certain muscle, it is nearly impossible for the other muscles to be neglected.
Welcome to Vision Class.
The web-based open classroom that helps its students interconnect to achieve their visions and find their life's greater purpose. Students can join Vision Class by simply logging onto YouTube and subscribing to the Vision Class channel. For a duration of 12 weeks, Vision Class will air a 1-hour lecture every Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, beginning Friday, June 7th, 2013.
So to stay abreast of what's going on in class and to always be aware, just remember you just want to go to our Facebook or Google Plus pages and you want to download the syllabus. Or you can download the syllabus directly by clicking on the link below. We have had some technical difficulties with downloading the syllabus, especially from Android phones. But in which case, if you're having any difficulties, never hesitate to email me at sugarfreemail@rocketmail.com, where I will answer questions and I will also be available to submit to you the syllabus if you are having issues with downloading it.
There are 6 class texts you will need for Vision Class. Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain, Write It Down, Make It Happen by Henriette Ann Clouser, The Isaiah Effect by Gregg Braden or A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, The Spontaneous Healing of Belief by Gregg Braden, and The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron.
The whole purpose of Vision Class is to interconnect, is to share, is to gain everyone's insight and testimonials such that your own vision is fueled. We want you not only to find your visions in life, but we want to use those visions as points on a map to help you figure out your life purpose, your life path.
Vision Class is updated constantly with information and changes that are vital to each student's success, so it is important that students remain vigilant of these updates on their own. By accessing our Facebook and Google Plus sites, students can find everything from the course syllabus to free downloadable texts by the mere click of a button. To access all Vision Class links for Facebook, simply click on the Notes section. To access all Vision Class links for Google Plus, simply click on the About tab at the top of the page and scroll down to the Links section. Students can also access the Vision Class calendar from one of the aforementioned sections, which allows you a quick glance of all dates, times, and assignments for Vision Class.
For your daily assignments, you'll need 3 notebooks to get started.
A notebook of any size to be utilized as a journal, labeled as the Legacy Book. A small notebook that is portable to carry with you at all times, labeled as the Intention Book. And a medium to large size notebook to help you take notes and complete class assignments labeled as the Vision Book. You will also need a presentation board of any kind, which you will update throughout class with inspirations and visions you hope to achieve in your life, newly titled the Vision Board.
This class is not, I will say it a million times. If you've never heard me say it once, you're going to hear me say it now. This class is not about what you're able to accomplish, okay? It is about what you do with your time. So it's not just, hey, I'm able to cover all the text material, Shira, now what? Because you can read all these books all day long and never become aware of your reality. No, this class is about how you connect to yourself, how you connect to your creator. How do you do that? By what you put into the class. This is about how to interconnect with your fellow students and find a way that works for you, such that this becomes a habit. And once this way of life becomes a habit for you, you will notice how easy it is to incorporate the elements of this class into your life.
Vision class has reached the halfway mark, so let's take a look back, because this week, learning our history becomes extremely important to know where we are headed in the future. In week 1, we discussed how visualization defines our visions through a series of techniques listed in Shakti Gawan's creative visualization. We also learned the importance of recovering a sense of safety in the artist's way, which allows us to feel comfortable with defining our visions to our creator. Through these two processes, we were able to begin the journey to manifesting our visions and thus our life's purposes. In week 2, we discussed how to empower our visions with affirmations with the help of our field expert Tay Queen. We also recovered a sense of identity, which allows us to define which individuals to accept into our space as we continue along our creative journey. With affirmations and visualization, we now have the power to manifest specific visions in our quest to discover what our life's purpose is. Speaking of power, in week 3, we recovered a sense of power in the artist's way by understanding how anger, shame, and synchronicity all point us in the direction of our life's path. We also learned how to solidify our visions on an Envision board, which is due at the end of this course. We ascertained that by using our intention books, we can devote a small part of each day to completing tasks that lead us to manifesting some of the biggest visions we hope to accomplish in our lives. In week 4, we began to learn how to activate our visions. The first way we learned to activate our visions was through the ancient power of writing, which is a key concept in Write It Down, Make It Happen. Not only does writing allow us to contribute to the manifesting of our visions through our intention book, but it enforces the act of receiving information in our daily morning pages. We also learned how to recover a sense of integrity in the artist's way, which allows us to get honest with ourselves in regards to what our true visions are. In week 5, we visited the text A New Earth and learned the power of activating our visions through reading and knowledge. Reading allows us to receive information and thus understand what others before us have learned in their life journeys, which are interwoven with ours. We also recovered a sense of possibility by learning to eliminate self-imposed limitations in the artist's way. Finally, last week, week 6, we finished A New Earth as we learned how to activate our visions through gratitude and abundance. Field expert Tay Queen visited Vision class and explained how etymology and time are key in understanding the other dimensions in this world, which is ultimately the dimension in which our true self resides. We also recovered a sense of abundance in the artist's way. Today in Vision class, we will discuss all of the tools for activating your vision with prayer and feeling and recovering our sense of connection. The reading for this week is The Artist's Way, Week 7, pages 117 through 128, though we will cover chapters 1 through 5 from the Isaiah Effect. The assignment for this week is to continue morning pages, artist date, and jotting dreams and visions in your vision book. Continue printing photos and working on your Envision board, focus on your readings, and spend 5 minutes a day to begin praying and meditating, and report your results on Facebook and Google+.
Welcome to Vision Class Week 7. My name is Shira. I'm your hostess, and I'm going to be telling you all about Week 7 today. So if you've stayed with us thus far, you've actually completed half the course. You've completed 6 weeks. And although it seems like you've got 6 weeks left, you actually have more like 4 weeks left, because this week and next week you get to finally take a break from reading. So if you did the reading deprivation in week 4 and you watched the lecture, you would have also known that you were not supposed to do the reading deprivation in week 4. And also if you had looked ahead in the syllabus, you would have known that this week and next week you're actually doing reading deprivation, except you will still be reading The Artist's Way for weeks 7 and 8. Last week you were told, and the week prior, that you were told to choose a book, whether it be A New Earth or The Isaiah Effect. But we only discussed in lectures 5 and 6 A New Earth. So since we do have those 2 weeks of reading, deprivation, if you will, for weeks 7 and 8, I'm going to take the liberty of discussing the Isaiah Effect these next 2 weeks. So if you did read the Isaiah Effect, you're still in luck, because I'll still be covering the topic. So no break for me. So there's a break in the assignments. I mean, all you have to do basically from this time until the end of next week is catch up. So for those of you who came in late and were worried, all you have to do is just jump on the wagon where we are now and catch up. So that being said, this week we are talking about activating your vision through prayer and feeling. Now, how does that relate to quantum physics, which you all know, if you've read the Isaiah Effect, is heavily laden with quantum mechanic theory and law. The way that prayer is related to quantum physics is going to be discussed throughout this class. But essentially, quantum physics is the scientific version of spirituality. So for those of us who could never seem to connect the dots between how does the spirit world connect back to the physical world, and where those two disciplines have constantly clashed throughout the last several millennia, we are now able to rectify that clashing through a science that is fairly new, and it's called quantum physics. So we will be learning about that today. And a lot of you may or may not be intimidated by the idea of learning about quantum theory, but don't worry. I will do my best to break it down as generally as possible, so that I will leave the tools up to you. This week also is a discovery week. I'm going to try to give you as much time as possible to research on your own from this point forward. So although you have completed half of the course, now you've completed the half of the course where I do most of the work for you, and now the work becomes a part of your life. So if you haven't gotten kickstarted on doing morning pages and on doing Artist Date, then you may be at a deficit, because now it is up to you to put the pieces of the puzzle together as class sort of culminates in graduation in the next couple of weeks. Also, those of you who have not been keeping up with work and are going to use this time to keep up with work, it is imperative, coming from me as the maestra of the class, as the teacher of the class, it is very important coming from my mouth to explain to you that if you cannot complete the work as it is assigned, it is simply your job to commit to something. All right, now I've said this before, but I want to reiterate because we are halfway through. Some of you are seeing how much work it is, and how much work you can actually do, and how much work you're willing to do, which are all very different things. So for those of you who have found that, you know what, it's too difficult, Shira, for me to do everything, then the minimum of what I'm asking you to commit to are morning pages, Artist Date, and lectures, at the very bare minimum. All right? And taking it a step further, I am now asking you to do the readings, perhaps not the assignments. Taking it another step further, of course, would be to add the assignments. Taking it another step further would be to do the assignments that I add at the end of each lecture. And taking it a step beyond that would be taking the time to research everything on your own so that you can come up to your own conclusions. And that is the layering that I would recommend in terms of what to do for this class. Some of you are auditing the class, which means you're just watching from week to week to see what it's all about. And that's fine too. But whatever it is that you choose, commit and do. And after class is over, after we've culminated, after we've graduated, then my recommendation is that you take the next year and begin incorporating each of the weekly topics into your life as practices. So you may start off trying to incorporate affirmations for a month. Then the next month you may try to incorporate visualization. In the following month you may begin to incorporate your intention book, and so on and so forth, until these practices become habits for you. That is really the point of vision class. Another note that I would like to make: a lot of people are concerned with how their visions are going to manifest when we've been talking so heavily about dismantling our false self or our ego, which we've learned to be called the ego in the last couple of weeks when we read A New Earth rather. The concept of this class is really to manifest your visions and life purpose, absolutely. But there's a deeper connection that I want you to make when you're in this class. The goal of vision class is not really just to manifest visions and find out our outer purposes or our life purposes, right? The actual intention of vision class is for you to find out who you really are. Or another way of saying that is for you to become aware. Another way of saying that is for you to be conscious. Another way of saying that is for you to get out of the way of the camera and go to the right, so that way you can have the vision class logo down here. Another way of saying that is we want you in vision class to become your truest, fullest self, whoever God intended for you to be, right? Now, on the physical plane, that means manifesting visions, and that means finding out what we're meant to do on this earth, which is also known as our life purpose. But even deeper than that, you cannot even get to the level of manifestation at its highest peak, and you cannot even get to the level of finding your life's purpose and being on track with that at its most resounding level if you don't find your true self. So essentially, we could manifest visions all day long, and we could find our life's purpose all day long. But if we don't know who we really are, then all of that is meaningless. Okay? All of that is futile. So what we have to do as we are taking this class seriously is understand that fundamentally we are trying to become our best self. And the best self that we have is connecting back to God. And the only way to do that is through various techniques, some of which I've provided in these 12 weeks, right? Affirmations, prayer, meditation, gratitude, visualization, etc. and so forth. Envision board, intention book, right? Reading, writing. These are fundamental principles, which I'm going to begin explaining this week through quantum physics. These are fundamental principles of lost texts that have not been made available to us until maybe the last 20 years or so. This is fundamental knowledge that if you just implement it in your daily life, granted it is difficult to implement because we're not used to, but as long as we begin incorporating it until it is our natural habit to write, it is our natural habit to do an affirmation. How do the topics of vision class correlate to not just manifesting our visions and life purposes, but what does it have to do with the ego? What does the ego have to do with our visions and life purposes? We can manifest a vision all day, right? We can manifest tons of visions. And we can also figure out our life's purpose, perhaps without ever doing an affirmation, perhaps without ever learning how to read or learning how to write or doing any of the techniques that are listed as topic ideas for vision class, correct? So the topics each week in vision class are multifunctional. They're not only topics, they're techniques, right? Meditation, gratitude, prayer, faith, right? These are belief. These are techniques that when employed in your daily life, they lead back to finding your truest self, which is what it has to do with the ego, which is the false self, the illusory self, right? So because of vision class, you are learning throughout each week how to incorporate a new technique into your life. Do I expect you to absorb it and do it perfectly every day? I don't. It takes years to build up to the level where all of your old habits are now replaced with habits that I, for example, have provided you in vision class, right? Or techniques that you may learn elsewhere. It takes years to channel that new way of life. So it's not so easy to just transition from how we were living before to writing in morning pages every day. That's a difficult transition, and it's a difficult transition to make habitual at that. But what these things do, what these techniques do, what all these exercises do, what the topics are designed to do, what the lectures are designed to do, is not necessarily specifically connect you to your vision. It's more to connect you to your highest self through these techniques. And once you connect to your highest self, visions manifest naturally, and so does the life purpose. It becomes apparent to you. Why? Because connecting to your highest self implies that you are now a person who is on your right path. Now, as I said before, there's no such thing as the wrong path, but there's a difference between your awareness of the path that you're on and your unconsciousness. So this class is leading you to awareness, right? That is why in the intro every week you see the butterfly and you see the awareness, right? And you see that theme being repeated throughout all of the texts. Awareness is key. Awareness connects you to your highest self. And through becoming aware, you then are connected to your visions, right? The visions that you simultaneously start having randomly connect you to your purpose, seemingly randomly, when all that's happening is you are becoming aware of what you need to do, and thus everything becomes easier for you to manifest because you're on the path that you are now aware that you are destined to be on, right? Because you can go on different paths, but it is obviously easier to listen to the universe than to not listen to the universe and to guide yourself, right? That is the path of destruction. That is the path of pain and suffering that we have been trying to dismantle these last 6 weeks. So by finding your highest self, you connect to the path that you are now aware of, and thus when you walk down that path, you're walking down that path consciously, which thus allows you to see your visions clearly and make them happen because you are connected. So that is how all of this information becomes a conglomerate and works for your greater good. So that being said, this week we're going to talk about prayer and feeling, right? And we're going to talk about this through quantum theory. Why are we going to do that? Well, you have to stay tuned and watch, but that's what we will be doing today. And we're going to briefly talk about recovering a sense of connection as outlined in Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. So very briefly, Julia Cameron in week 7 talks about recovering a sense of connection. And something that I wanted to offer as a tip for you guys, I posted it up on Facebook and Google+, but a really great way to establish connection, not just with your creator, but with other beings around the world. And it's huge. It is a huge way to connect back to your creator, is you want to begin, as you're doing your morning pages and artist date, to stop. To consciously stop when you can think about it. Take a deep breath in and to begin thinking about all of the other individuals who are right at this moment doing the same thing as you. Even if you do it right now, think about all of the people who don't even have to think about, you don't know who's watching this lecture, but you want to begin to think of the possibility or the idea that there are multiple people in on this process. And by stopping to acknowledge that, or to not even think about it, to feel it, right? To take the moment to know inherently that there are other people on this journey with you right now. There's someone else watching Vision Class right now, just like you are. What that begins to do is that begins to connect you back to one another, right? How does this do that? Because your energy becomes conscious of one another. You see, your truest self is when you become conscious of your consciousness,
That's when you're your truest self. So when you take the moments to stop and pause, especially with adding a deep breath, you automatically connect back to the whole. Automatically. Even if you don't, I mean, come on, how many people, how do you know how many people are watching vision class? It could be no one, right? It could just be you. But the possibility, the idea that someone else is, sends the energy waves out, right? And they get to resonate and bounce off one another and come back to you twofold, threefold, fourfold, however many people are watching, exponentially comes back to you, right? So if right now you're watching vision class and you stop and think, someone else is on this journey with me. If that's all that you think or feel, really, you don't just want to think it, you want to feel it. You want to take the time as you're thinking that thought to feel the excitement of what knowledge you have and what knowledge you're sharing just by acknowledging, just by being aware of the fact that other people are on this journey with you right now, literally right now, right? When I stopped and did morning pages this morning, I even wrote down how many people are writing their morning pages right now. What a sense of gratitude I had. And even I believe, you know, people don't understand the interconnectedness of things. Again, that's why we're going to talk about quantum physics today. But in quantum physics, which proves, right, there's a lot of debate, but it's all ego. There has genuinely been proof, right, of quantum physics as a science, right? It's more accepted form of science that science is now reluctant and reticent to adapt to because it's so far left from what we're used to hearing about when we talk about science, because now we're incorporating God into it, right? And that's a very, very scary thought for scientists who have refuted that idea for a long time, right? Not all scientists, but many scientists. So it's great to have Gregg Braden, who acknowledges the union and the marriage of the two disciplines. And if you really think about it, if there's a God, right? Because, well, I mean, I'm not going to say that I disbelieve it, but I'm just saying for those who disbelieve, if there's a God, right? If there's a God, we know that God is either all powerful or God is not powerful. So if God is powerful, then God would have created anything that exists, period, which obviously includes science. So from the spiritual standpoint, perhaps science has its place, but perhaps from a scientific standpoint, spirituality has not had its place. So now here it is, it has its place. The reason I'm saying this is because the interconnectedness is real. And the moment that you take a second to acknowledge it, you reinforce it. So if at that moment of acknowledgement, you're having the thought and another person's having a thought, now your resonance holds 4 times as much power. Why? Because there's 2 individuals, okay? And it becomes exponential. So 2 individuals raised to the second power, which means the number 4, right? If there are 3 individuals, it's 3 times 3 times 3. Now you're 27 times as powerful. And I know that's mathematical, and I know I said I would break it down, but I've actually broken it down in another video, and so today we're not going to do that. But I'm just trying to give you the idea that with the amount of people who are in on an act, and we'll show this today, we will prove it for you today, and we'll prove it for you next week, actually. Next week is when it really, really, really becomes solidified, because as you read the Isaiah effect, you will see, literally, mathematically, how it was shown, how it was proven, the amount of percentage of people necessary to change an event through prayer. It was proven. It's in the Isaiah effect. I make this up not. I kid you not. So I want you to know that if you take that time to stop, you're recovering a sense of connection. That being said, we will also cover connection next week when we talk about meditation. Because what connection is the art of listening. So this week we're talking about the art of prayer, and then of course next week we talk about meditation. And part of your practice for your assignment is to begin praying. Now some of us don't know how to pray. Some of us don't know how to meditate. It's a real, discipline that people are, incapable of doing without the knowledge. So that's why we're going to give it to you. So next week when we talk about meditation, we're talking more about listening. Prayer is more about asking. Meditation is more about listening. So when you pray, you are sending out the vibe, and when you meditate, you are bringing in the vibe. So because of that, we won't go so deep into the listening aspect. But one of the ways that you listen, just as I mentioned in about week 1 or the introductory lecture, I talked about morning pages and artist date as being a meditative practice. Well, why is that? Because a meditative practice causes you to listen. So when you do your morning pages, you're actually listening. When you do your artist date, you're actually listening. You're receiving, you're taking in information. You are doing nothing. And so to those people, when I said earlier, it is imperative that if you do the bare minimum of morning pages and artist date, you'll be okay. It is imperative that you understand that it's an act of listening. Well, why is it important to listen? As I said earlier, when you connect to your life's purpose and when you're on your path and when you have all of your visions lined up and you have things that you want to manifest, why is it important to listen? So that you don't go down a path that is more difficult for you as a physical human being to learn from, right? We can learn from other people's paths. I don't want to say mistakes. We can learn from other people's paths. We can learn from other people's lives. So why walk down a path that doesn't have to be as difficult? Because to say that life is easy is a lie. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's difficult, right? For us to say that life is easy would be a misnomer. It's a lie. Life is not easy. And to those of us who even to those of us who are awakened, life is still work, as we talked about last week. So because life is still work, there's no way of getting around the lessons that you're going to learn. You're going to still have to learn lessons in life. So why not make those lessons just a little bit simpler on you? Just a little bit more easy to handle. And the way that we do this is by listening. Example. Has any of you, and this has happened to me, have any of you, and I'll actually talk about this today, been in a situation where you know that messages were being told to you, that you know messages were coming in, and you kept wanting your will to be done, right? Not the will of your creator, but your will, right? You can exercise free will. And that's why I say that your path can be more difficult. Because when your will is exercised and not your creator's will, your path is rocky, right? It's not going with the flow. You're allowing pebbles, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, you're allowing pebbles to hold up your stream, right? You're allowing minute details to hold up your progress. You are. So when you listen, you go with the flow. Even if it doesn't feel for you as a human being, I don't know if I should walk down that dark tunnel, but that's called faith. And of course that's week 12, but that's faith. When you're able to walk out into a situation that you don't know anything about and you do it anyway. That's faith. That's the creator's will. That's listening. And how is this done? Well, this is done through, listening is not only done through the morning pages, but as I said, through the artist date. So as long as you're going on your artist date and as long as you're doing stream of consciousness writing, answers come in. I asked a question today. I asked a question to my morning pages today. And of course, without thinking, because I wasn't thinking when I did the morning pages, without thinking, the answer came onto the page. I mean, it was weird. It was something that I could not remember or figure out. And I was like, I just cannot for the life of me figure out. I have a stone, right? I have a stone that I use for a certain reason. And I'm like sitting there thinking, what does the stone supposed to do for me again? I can't remember. And as I'm writing, it just, literally came out onto the paper. Now, I know that that's very surreal for many people. Like, how does your hand just write and it's not your thoughts, right? But to those of us who have not written the morning pages as they are designed to do, will not have that experience. So you do, it's part of listening to just allow, right? To allow things, to know when to allow things, to know when to act. Many people come to me, how do I know if this is right? How do I know? By listening. So this is an art, this is a technique, this is a practice that we will learn next week. That being said, another topic that is covered this week is the idea of taking risks. Now again, this is covered in your artist date. Why is your artist date a risk? Because many people have come to me and thought that the artist date should just be taking yourself out to dinner every week, or watching a movie with yourself every week, or staying in the house and cooking a nice meal. That's one artist date. But if it's in your comfort zone, you cannot expect different results. Speaking of quantum physics, Albert Einstein said that doing the same thing over and over, and I'm paraphrasing, Doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results is insanity. So for those of us doing the artist date and we're stuck in a rut and we don't know what to do for ourselves, it's all about taking risks. Why? Because you're gonna die one day, man. What? You're going to die one day. Every step that you take in this life, all these precautions and all of these, precarious situations where we're just gonna stay reserved and we're just not gonna do anything, and you know what? I'm just gonna take the safe route because it's not safe. You're going to die. Must I remind you? You will die. You'll die. Physically, your body will die. Everybody that's wondering what happens to your spiritual body after you die, will you go to heaven, will you go to hell? Well, you're not going to be able to answer that right now, are you? Right. So you're going to die. Yeah, I'm not trying to scare you, but I'm going to die, you're going to die, my daughter's going to die, my mom's going to die, my dad's going to die, everyone's going to die. So, and I'm putting it in perspective. I've lived 31 years. I may be a third of the way done. If God willing, I'm a fourth of the way done. But even a quarter of the way done. I mean, I've lived a fourth of my life, if that. So what you mean to tell me, Shira, is I've lived a third of my life and I've spent it trying to owe everybody else and not to do anything? And yes, that's what I'm telling you. That's what people do. We spend all of our life, we wait till 60, 70 to start living. Well, gone it by then, you're decrepit. Not really, but you know what I'm saying? You can't do all the things you wanted to do in your youth. That's why I was on my path of being a doctor, and I was like, yo, I like to dance. And no matter what people have told me, let me tell you guys something. I'm going to tell you something about vision class right now. Every single day of my life, ever since doing vision class and ever since ballroom dancing, I promise you this, my life has purpose. It did not have purpose before. Do you understand? I went to a job. Yeah, I kind of liked the job and I liked the people there and the work was fine. But in the end of the day, there was nothing that I could hold in my hand and give to somebody and say, look, this is what I've accomplished. This is what that meant. I didn't have that, right? Because if you have experiences in your life where their only goal is to make money or to sustain your house, then you're living a life for yourself. Because what does your life mean other than paying rent and buying things? That's why I said earlier, the point of this class is not just to get you some visions. Yeah, let me just, I want to manifest a big old house over there. Yes, but what is the purpose of that? What's it going to do for you? Well, it's going to provide, a roof over my kids' heads. Well, I have a roof over my head right now. Why do I need the house? Maybe you do. You might need it. I'm not saying you don't. But I'm asking you, does that relate to your true self or not? We beg these questions. We ask for your awareness to figure this out through these techniques. One of them being listening, through artist date, through the morning pages. Now through prayer, you're going to ask, of course, not listen, but prayer is another technique, right? It's a way of life. I don't even want to call it a technique. I don't even want to make it so technical, right? It's a way of life. It's something you do. This is not something that you get to pick if you want to do it or not. Eventually, you will find that your life cannot manifest fully without certain things that you have to do, right? Certain work that you do. But the work is not the same type of work, right? It's still work, okay? Doing morning pages is still work, but it's fulfilling work. Why? Because to know what your life is about and what it's for, are we telling ourselves that it's for no reason? Right? Really, look at the rat race that we run every day. We get in our car or we get on our public transportation, we go somewhere, we do a job, we come home. We hate it. We can't wait till the end of the night to get drunk, to watch a television show, to unwind in ways that are also unfulfilling. Just because so much of our energy, we talked about this week 1, just because so much of our energy has elapsed because we spent it doing things that don't fulfill us, that don't regenerate and recharge us. We go back to bed, even sleep is not fulfilling. I'm going to tell you that every waking moment of my life is fulfilling. Everything has meaning. Down to the wind that blows at 5:03, all the way to the breath I take at 7:45 that I'm conscious of. Every little piece starts to connect, starts to become meaningful. As I said, I wake up in the morning, I wake up already having a good day. Just already waking up having a good day because I had a dream that was vivid, because I've done the morning pages, because the work energizes itself. It creates. This is a creative class. That's why we're doing the artist way. So here I am. I wake up in the morning. I write my morning pages. I get more fulfillment. I'm doing an affirmation on my morning page every morning, right? I am efficient, productive, and accomplished every morning. Guess what? I'm going to pull that out of there and I'm going to echo it on my vision boarding. All of these techniques, which are cyclic or circular, begin to connect to one another. And then as I'm doing all of the work, I notice something. Everything in my life starts to become fulfilled. Joy starts to pour in little by little. It's not every day. It's not automatic. It's through practice. The 3 P's: preparation, practice, and patience, right? Patience being listening at this point, right? So, and everything I do, even on my ride to work, I'm listening to music that fulfills me. I go to my work, my job, and I know that at the end of the day, I'm going to become a better dancer. Is that fulfilling to me? Yes, I've dreamt about it for years. Everything. Even when I come home and I cook something that is good for my soul, typically nowadays, but it's better for my soul than the food I was eating before. I don't go to McDonald's and go get, you know what I'm saying? I don't go get a number 7 or 10 or whatever at McDonald's anymore. I don't. It's not even on purpose. I just don't, because everything has to become fulfilled. Little by little, everything, whether you're losing weight, whether you're manifesting a vision of losing weight, whatever your vision is, it begins to fulfill you. And that becomes your life's purpose. You find it through the visions. So the idea is to take risks, because without the risk, you do not have the payoff. There's no payoff in doing something easy, right? How many of you have been given something, and how many of you have worked for something? Those of you who have worked for something, amen when it happens. I mean, think about it this way. Had I not been praying about being a ballroom dancer, praying, keyword praying, had I not prayed about being a ballroom dancer for the last half of a decade, had I not done it so meticulously with the visualization technique, right? Because I did it. I did affirmations. I did visualization. I prayed on it. I meditated on it, right? I had gratitude for every moment. I mean, I did all of the techniques, but nothing was happening. So why is it that it's such a payoff? Why is it so fulfilling now? Because of what I know that I have gone through to get to just this place. So every day becomes grateful, and you're not taking it for granted. And that is where you need to get to, where you're like, wow, a third of my life has passed, perhaps. Maybe not even a third. I could die tomorrow. Maybe 90% of my life has elapsed already. I don't know. And that's the idea of taking a risk. Because you're not going to play yourself for a life that you can't take. You can't take this life for granted. You don't know when you're, come on now. You don't know. You don't know. To say you know, to say you know is dismissive, and it is irresponsible to say that you know when your life is, you don't know. You don't control that. Obviously, unless you commit suicide, you do not control when you go on a conscious level. You don't. So if you don't control it, what are you going to control? You're going to let your life control you too? Or are you going to listen to what is meant for you based upon a set of principles that you are going to want to do anyway, right? Because the life that's meant for you is the life you want. How ironic is that? But nobody is taught that. Nobody is taught that, right? We're taught practicality. Left brain. I mean, that's what we're taught. So what happens is we have an overweighted left brain and our right brain's doing nothing. It's doing nothing. Let's balance the scales of duality here so that we have just enough physical reality and we have a lot of spiritual reality to balance it. But you see, The spiritual reality is going to have to come in the boatloads because we have had such a lack of it, right? We're like anemic of spirituality. We have to start, even those of us who have been like God, even those of us who have been on the God bandwagon our entire lives are still spiritually inept. We are. Because if we were not, we'd be fulfilled already. Amen? So take a risk. On something where you guys are going to have to make all the deductions yourself. I will not be the one to draw all of the conclusions for you at this point in time. This is where we start giving you the rope. What are you going to do with the rope? Pull yourself up with it, or right? All right, so let's talk about the Qumran caves and the Nag Hammadi library. All right, so first and foremost, does anyone understand the history of religion in general? Does anyone understand it? And what I mean is not what was told to you. Has anyone actually researched history of how things have become what they are in this current state, right? As we're here in 2013, the way things look and the way things are. Has anyone brought themselves to an understanding of how that came to be? Do any of you want to know what happened? Is it important? Here's the deal. What I have found is that people are reticent to study historical facts because it has been taught to us that if we know the basis of our beliefs, that we are questioning our beliefs, which then leads us to believe that we are now weakening our beliefs through the questioning. What I have found is that learning my history has taught me to fortify my beliefs. Why is that, Shira? Here's a great example. I studied African American studies in college. Why did I do this? When I was growing up, I didn't get black Barbie dolls. I wasn't taught about black history. The most that I knew was what McDonald's put up in the Happy Meals every February. Okay, that was what I knew about black history. And I felt not good about that. I didn't feel good about that. Why, Shira, didn't you feel good about that? Because if someone's feeding me information, oughtn't I, to use correct grammar, shouldn't I make sure that what someone's telling me is accurate? After all, that is how I came to be, right? Through the history, the historical context, that's who I am. Is it something I dwell on? Is it something I fixate on? No. Is it referential and important? 120% it is important. Why? Think about it this way. If you're African American and you don't know your ancestral linkage, right? Your ancestral history. Or if you're Asian, you don't know your ancestral history. You're just Asian and you're just here. Think of the difference between having a knowledge of where you've come from and not having a knowledge. What is the difference? The difference is how grounded are you in your knowledge of self. The less information that you have about yourself, the less grounded you are. Example, I'm teaching this class. If all I have ever read was a pamphlet about vision class, Am I as qualified to teach this class as the individual who has read all of these texts several times? Absolutely not. You understand? The knowledge is the power. This is also week 6 that we just talked about. Or excuse me, this is week 5 that we just talked about. Activating our visions through reading, which is knowledge. Reading, knowledge, history, important. What if I told you that all of the information that you have thus far, these books, right? What if I told you that this information wasn't new? What if I told you that this information is old as dirt? What if I told you when you walk down the New Age or metaphysics aisle, okay, at the bookstore at Barnes & Noble, that you were not accessing New Age at all? You were actually accessing old age information that has recently been made available to you. Would that change your perception of the information? What if I told you that this so-called New Age information was also linked to what we know now as the Bible? Linked directly. In fact, came from the exact same esoteric text. What would you say then? What if I proved it to you today? What would you say? All right, I'm leaving it. I'm not saying anything. I'm asking you a question. At the time of the derivation of Christianity, right? The book was actually larger than the book that we have now. This is 100% fact. In about 1945, 22,000 fragments of papyrus and metallic scrolls were found in 11 different caves, okay, called the Qumran caves. And these caves contained information, obviously, that was written in the original language of the Bible, which was Aramaic and also Hebrew, right? In these original languages, which it's very hard to get a scholar who speaks Aramaic and can translate it verbatim and also make it make sense in other languages, right? We talked about etymology last week. This is where we come back to that and why that's important. It's very difficult to translate a text from a language that has no equivalent words in other languages, right? So at this time, in 1945, when all of these scrolls were found, they were given the title the Dead Sea Scrolls. Again, Google this information. Incidentally, I'm going to keep going. Incidentally, in 1956, something else was found, right where the Dead Sea Scrolls left off, called the Nag Hammadi Library, right? And in this Nag Hammadi Library, all of the information was pieced together, and we found that 41 texts have been removed from the current Bible. Yes, we know this. How do we know this? Because in 1991, this information was made, or rather 1990, this information was made available to the general public. Question: why did it take 2,000 years, damn near, for this information to be made available to us? Why was this information hidden in caves? In the 4th century, I'm not answering these questions this week, y'all. I'm not doing it. In the 4th century, we discovered there was a council of Nicaea. And Nicaea decided that, the general public, I don't know if, they could really handle all these 41 extra books and stuff. It's long, it's redundant, and whatever list and multitude of reasons that they had for removing these texts caused them to remove 41 texts, hide them, and we don't even know that it's just 41. I mean, let's be real. It could be 50 million, right? Who knows? But we know that 41 texts were removed through the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century. Incidentally, also in the 4th century, the Roman Empire recognized Catholicism as being the religion of their state. Anyone that practiced any of the beliefs of the esoteric Bible, the Bible that did contain these 41 texts, these 41 plus texts, Anyone who practiced that was considered of the occult, right? And also, they were not recognized as Christian. Even though the original Bible did contain these texts. Can't even talk. Isn't it interesting that around the time that other Christians were not being recognized as Christians, the book was being dwindled down to the version that we know of today? Isn't it interesting that in the 4th century, 41 texts were edited out, and also in the 4th century, the Roman Empire was able to recognize this edited text as the basis for the foundation of their religion, which was Catholicism. Interesting. It's also interesting that over the next 17 centuries, that the information was not found, nor was it made available to the general public. Now, sure, who cares if books were edited out? Hey, we still know what the book says, the good book says. I agree with you. But that's why last week we talked about etymology and intention, right? If you know the intention, then you can translate anything, right? I don't care if you've translated from Aramaic to Hebrew to Greek to Italian to Spanish to English, back to Ebonics, back to English, take it back to Aramaic. You know, you did the electric slide with it. I don't care what you did with it. If you understand the author's intention, you can translate anything. I don't care if the Bible has one word, the. If you understood what the author was trying to tell you in then you understand the text. But I want you to understand what the knowledge of what has happened does for you. And that's why I'm leaving it to you, to tell you what that does for you. We're going to move on now to quantum physics. The Essenes were basically these people who were no longer acknowledged as Christians. So basically the first Christians, right? All right. So the Essenes, what did they do? They understood the collective consciousness, that which is now studied so fervently in New Age texts, right? So they understood collective consciousness because it was in these 41 texts that were missing. It was talked about, detailed, right? Amongst other things. So because they understood this collective consciousness, they understood how the choice of one affected everybody. So those of us who are in vision class and we say we're going to stop and we're going to pause and we're going to look at the whole, right? We're going to look at the whole as a function of the individual who is writing in their morning pages. We are practicing that ancient wisdom, which is what I said we would do, right? Which I said we would prove. That said, in 1998, there was a mass prayer. And the reason I'm talking about this is because we're talking about prayer, but we're also talking about how the individual affects the whole and how the work of a collective group of people on the same vibration and wavelength can affect others who aren't even involved, right? I said this earlier. This really happened. Again, you can Google anything that I'm talking about here and find the answers. But there was a mass prayer in 1998 where there was an attack that was literally what's the word I'm looking for? It was already in motion, already set in motion, this attack. And what happened was a vigil was held, right? Throughout the efforts of the World Wide Web, which is really huge, guys. It's huge that you're watching me on the web right now and not on television. It's huge. It's also huge that this happened throughout the web, which the web, meaning World Wide Web, the interconnectedness. Girl, honey, please. I got references all day. The World Wide Web connects everybody. So people were able to know that this vigil was going to be held where everybody was going to concentrate in prayer on dissipating, right? Excuse me. Everybody was going to concentrate in prayer on actually keeping this attack from happening. And what could happen through that prayer was the hope that this attack would be ceased. Now, even though the attack had already been set in motion, I mean, literally the fighter plane was on its way to drop a bomb. People were praying at the exact same moment that this plane was getting ready to drop this bomb. And mid-attack, the plane turned around and was given a directive not to drop the bomb. Now, a lot of people don't understand that as being valid, right? Or, you know, what does that have to do with anything? And how is that really true? And how can prayer really do that? But the idea was to demonstrate that a certain threshold, when reached, allows that interconnectedness of people to affect decisions already set in motion. And this is where quantum physics now comes into play. Quantum physics is the study of how quantum affects our physical world, or quanta. What are quanta? Right now, I'm giving you very scientific definitions here for the sake of the scientific community, but I will simplify this in a second. So, quantum physics is the study of how quanta affect our physical world. So, quantum mechanics is the idea that a series of possible outcomes exist at the same time until a choice is made. Once the choice is made, all of the possibilities collapse, and that one outcome is what we see. So in other words, we are existing in a reality where several things are possible. This is how in one moment you can go from living in your mansion to being homeless, right? Now that's a very oversimplified way of talking about quantum physics, but it is still a very real way of talking about quantum physics. In other words, there are several possibilities, okay, that exist at the same time. What are those possibilities? One of those possibilities is that you're homeless. Another one is that you live in a mansion. Another one is that you live in your car. Another one is that you live on the subway. So several possible outcomes exist, but only one outcome is your reality, right? That would be your physical reality, right? So if you're experiencing right now that you live in a mansion, well, out of all the possibilities that exist, the one choice that you have made or the one choice that has existed for you is the outcome of living in a mansion. But the minute that you go from living in a mansion to living on the street is the point at which the possibilities have now collapsed into a new reality, a new physical reality, right? A new choice has been made to be homeless. This is the idea of quantum mechanics, right? So this is studied with quanta, which are small bursts of light. What are quanta? If you think of a cartoon, if any of you know how a cartoon works, a cartoon essentially is a series of snapshots, right, made on several pieces of paper, and then when you string those shots together, you get a moving picture, right? This is how the original motion pictures were done. This is how cartoons are done, blah, blah, blah. Snapshots put together. All right, but the snapshots are so precisely similar that we, through the human eye, perceive it as a constant motion when it's actually a series of small events. And this is how quantum physics talks about these possibilities as collapsing into a certain reality. Now again, I just made that very, very complex. So the example you always want to think of is the idea that at any given moment in time, your reality changes. That at any given moment in time, your reality changes based upon the choices you make, right? But every choice that you make still lies in an endless world of possibilities that exist simultaneously. Now this is quantum physics. Many people debate it. It has been proven. You can see the reference that I'm going to put here, which is the double slit experiment. But if anyone's confused about quantum physics, this experiment should clear it up for you fairly simply, right? But again, quantum physics is the idea that several possibilities always are existing right now at the same time, and a choice that you make determines which of those possibilities becomes your reality. In other words, I'm trying to say this as many ways as possible because I know that science for everybody, it just doesn't go in like that with everybody. Everyone doesn't have that left brain like that, and I'm just not even being funny, it's just real. Another way of saying that is, right now, I'm sitting on a couch. There's an alternate reality that exists where I'm not sitting on the couch, where I'm sitting outside in the grass. There's another reality that exists where right now I'm standing in a field. There's another reality right now that exists where I'm white, okay? There's all kinds of realities that exist. But the one reality that you see before you right now is the choice that I have consciously made or unconsciously made to be sitting in this chair at this moment in time. But quantum physics, because of its very postulate, allows us to know that we can be in an alternate reality within seconds, within moments. All we have to do is make the choice. What does this have to do with vision class? Because if I'm telling you that there is another reality that exists where your visions are truly manifesting, then all you have to do is make the choice. Granted, our physical limitations and duality cause us to constantly flip-flop back and forth between what we believe and what we disbelieve. But even through all of that, we can still manifest another reality. And time is relative. And we talked about this last week. It's relative. It's not real. It's relative to what you're perceiving right now. Yes. So that being said, what does time have to do with quantum physics? Why am I talking about this now? If you read the Isaiah Effect, and this is the coolest story I've ever read. This was what really sold me, and I already was sold on quantum physics. There were a group of individuals in Egypt, and these individuals were from different religious backgrounds. They were from different disciplines of life, walks of life. All these individuals were taking a trip from one part of Egypt to Cairo. Now this trip usually takes no less than 7 hours. Why? Because there were constant checkpoints, right? Because of, the rules of the country. There are constant checkpoints. They're constantly checking for contraband. They're constantly checking everyone's IDs. This happens several times. Not only this, but the roads are narrow. They're unpaved. They're very unstable. So constantly throughout this journey, they have to slow down. They have to maneuver around other cars that are traveling these really narrow roads, these really precarious situations. And thus, the trip always takes 7 hours nonetheless. Now, everybody on this caravan, when they finally arrived in Cairo, all of the soldiers in the military of Egypt jumped off the caravan and were looking around talking at each other like, they had this look on their face, and they're looking around like looking at their watches, and they're like, oh my God. So when Gregg Braden, who was on this caravan, who was the author of the Isaiah Effect, asked one of his homeboys, excuse me, why are they doing all of that? And his homeboy said, we got to Cairo in 4 hours. And he said, and? He said, you don't understand. It's impossible. It's impossible. The trip takes 7 hours, minimum, right? Like I know that to drive from Chicago to Detroit is 4 hours. Even if it took me 2 hours, it would be impossible for me to arrive in 20 minutes, is the comparison that's being made here, right? It's impossible unless I'm on a plane. That being said, the idea started to come into play, and of course Gregg Braden would experience this because if you are heavily in your belief, things like this happen to you. The idea is that when everybody is fixated on a certain reality, time becomes irrelevant. They were able to arrive in Egypt in 4 hours because of their feeling of being there. They were so heavily in anticipation of being there. They were so excited about the idea of seeing the pyramids and of being there. And they could feel the air. And everybody on this group, right? Everybody in this group saw the same thing happen. It wasn't just him. The point of that is because they were all from different religious backgrounds, because they were from different disciplines, and because they still arrived, everyone saw that they arrived in 4 physical hours, right? I'm not talking about conceptual time here. I'm talking about in 4 physical hours they arrived when they shouldn't have been there for another 3, if not 5 or 6. So the idea is that at a single point in time, everybody's consciousness was so fixated on the actual event where they felt it, right? They felt what it was like to be in Cairo. Many of them had been on the trip before, right? So everybody, no matter where they were from, no matter their religious, no matter their racial background, their creed, their sexual orientation, it didn't matter. They were all in this mindset that, hey, I'm in Egypt. And I am at the pyramids, and I know what that sensation is like, and they felt it, right? That's what I said today, that no matter what's going on in Morning Pages, you're going to feel it. Well, at the point at which they felt it, their reality emerged. Quantum physics. Out of all the possible realities at that moment, which could have been them traveling in the caravan, their new reality manifested. But how did it happen? Feeling. What is feeling? Well, we're learning this week that feeling equates to prayer. Now, granted, we're going to actually read about this in the Isaiah effect, moreover, in the next couple of chapters that are not addressed this week. But just to give you a preview, because I still like to talk about the chapters in order, even if they aren't necessarily related to the topic of the lecture. But when we talk about quantum physics and we talk about prayer, we talk about this idea of feeling, right? So, and again, I'm going to talk about this more next week, but the idea that when you feel something, you're actually praying, right? Or you're getting to the heart of what prayer means, you then manifest a new reality, which is quantum physics. So really fast, Gregg Braden talks about prophecy, and I'm not going to go there today, not because I don't like prophecy and I don't want to study prophecy, but we know all the prophecies of Nostradamus and Edgar Cayce, and I've got a synchronistic story about Edgar Cayce, but I'm not going to talk about it today, see, because I ain't got time. We have covered so much. But essentially, the reason why we're talking about prophecy is a couple reasons. Number one, prophecy, 2012 already came. And now everyone's gonna, because the thing about prophecy is that's intriguing and how it relates to quantum physics is prophecy doesn't always look the same everywhere, right? You've got your Hopi, you've got your Mayan, you've got Nostradamus, you've got Edgar Cayce, you've got, what's his name? Methuselah. You've got all these different entities and figures, Isaiah, which is why it's called Isaiah effect. You have all these different prophets, people who have predicted the outcome of the future down to this very moment, 2012, this great shift. Right? And some people talk about it as death, and some people talk about it as rebirth. So which one is it? Well, 2012 came, 2012 has gone. What's happening? Is it a physical rebirth? Is it a spiritual what is happening? The idea is, first of all, there's duality, right? You're going to have prophecy based upon the time that the prophet lived, based upon the possible outcomes, quantum physics, possible outcomes that would have existed from that moment to their projection into the future, right? So in 1903, the prophecy will be different than in 1754. It's going to be different of the same point in time because of the course of events that have now changed, the butterfly effect, if you will, right? So if events change, No matter what the prophecy will change, is what essentially he's saying. But why would it change? Quantum physics. New realities manifest every day, right? So even if Nostradamus said the world's gonna end, bye, see you later. If the world doesn't end, then what happened? Why is there an alternate reality in its place? Maybe it's gonna happen in 2015. Maybe it's not gonna happen, right? We have all these prophecies. So, and I'm not talking about this to start any sort of debate or questions about prophecy, because that's not even my point in this class. So if you want to talk about that, I personally, I'm not going to go there. I mean, I could, but I don't really, it's not my cup of tea right now. But the point I'm trying to help you to see is that prophecy varies, right? Prophecy about a certain point in time varies based on the time of the prophecy. We know that. That's fact. That's not even a debate. That being said, how does the intended outcome change? This guy right here, that guy right there. All of our choices, just as the voices of people who were in the vigil of the mass prayer of 1998, just as their prayer changed the outcome of an event that was already in motion, we individuals have the power collectively, not individually, but individually as contributing to the group, the whole, the vision class, right? I'm an individual contributing to the whole, you're an individual contributing to the whole. The whole has the power to manifest that new reality, quantum physics, right? So if the prophecy says this is going to happen, and hey, it is happening, but then other things are happening that were also prophesied that contradict the prophecy in different areas by different authors, by different people in the same book, mind you. If it's slightly off, if it's slightly different, why? They understood. There is even an implication in the Isaiah effect from the prophet Isaiah. There's even an implication that Isaiah understood that at a certain point in time, people will be able to analyze data differently and thus would affect the outcome. And you're going to read that for yourself in chapter 5. I'm not going to talk about it, but that's what I'm trying to say to you. Even the prophets foresaw, I mean, it's not highly publicized, but 1991 was when we found out, damn it. But even the prophets knew that there would be a technology available. Guess what it's called? You've got it, World Wide Web. There would be a technology, that's one of the technologies. Obviously the computer advent is, the invention of the computer and all of its subsidiaries and all of its implications of its invention, itself have created, right, which include the World Wide Web, which include technology, software, all of this. You've got all of this technology that now allows you to change your reality even quicker because of your connection to the whole, which is now very different than it was in the 1920s where there was no internet, right? Before there was a certain type of television with cable where you can, there's certain things that are here now that weren't there then, but even the prophets knew that those things would be there, suggesting that the reality could also change. Which is why, interestingly enough, which is why you hear about the words a new earth in the esoteric texts that were omitted from the current Bible. A new earth must mean one thing: our manifestation of a new reality that is different from the end of days. Different from the end of days. Sure, are you saying that the end of days doesn't have to happen? Maybe not in the trajectory that it's happening now. I don't know. I mean, I can't tell you the 100% answer. And also, I'm not going to tell you the 100% answer of what I know, because this is part of your quest and journey. But do you understand what I'm saying? What I'm trying to help you see is I'm not trying to say there's a fallacy in the prophecy. There's no fallacy in the prophecy. The prophecy was accurate. Where the fallacy lies is with, I don't even want to say the fallacy, where the contradiction lies is with human perception of the reality as a group, right? How the human perception as a group has affected that prophecy, the outcome of it, based on quantum physics. and if you've ever watched the movie Limitless, what we found is that 10% of our brain is used while 90% goes unused. There's a principle, many of you have heard this before, as within, so without, or as above, so below. Well, what does that mean? That means that you can look outside of yourself and understand what's going on inside of yourself and vice versa. Meaning, if you want to look at physical reality, you can understand spiritual reality. If you look at spiritual reality, you'll understand the implications of that on physical reality. Okay, so we know this concept, as above, so below, as within, so without, right? We also have found other things. Again, this is through the advent of technology. We understand that the human atom, although there have been two different models of the atom represented, still resembles exactly the solar system. Why is the very smallest element of a human being look like something that's on the very largest scale of the cosmos? Weird. Okay, talk about it like this. Did you know the amount of stars in the sky is approximately the same amount of cells in the human body? Wait, what? Wait, what? Shira, I don't believe you. Google it. This is not my information, please. Okay. So wouldn't it be interesting if we found out, because we did find out, that 10% of physical reality is expressed and the other 90% vibrates at such a high level that we don't see it. It's on another dimension. Wait, what? Is there evidence of this? You know there's evidence. Now, we're talking about quantum physics now. We're talking about real stuff now. I'm not talking about theories. Yes, there are debates in the scientific community. You know, the scientific community, let me tell you guys something. I'm a mathematician and scientist, like at heart. I'm great at this stuff. Like I'm good at, this is what I'm good at. I'm better at this than I am at grammar or anything else. I mean, I will tear up some science. But here's the deal. We all know the scientific community doesn't even agree with itself. I mean, come on. The world is flat. Just kidding. The world is round. Haha, just kidding. I mean, who knows, right? Guess what else? Here's my favorite one. Newton. The one law of the universe is gravity. Einstein. The second law, which has to disprove what Newton said. Okay, Isaac Newton. Guess what? Albert Einstein spent like 10 years in most of his life. And the only thing that he won the Nobel Prize for was understanding. So not only is there gravity, I'm going to tell you something. There's something called the space-time continuum. Yeah, that exists. So it's not just gravity. The scientific community does this every day, right? They find out something new that replaces something new, that replaces something new, that replaces something new, right? This happens everywhere. I'm not just going to blame scientists or something, but I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. Sure, why are you telling us? I'm telling you to help you understand that even if there's refutation of a certain postulate in the scientific community, it doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't matter if science refutes quantum theory or quantum mechanics or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter if scientists refute it, because they're constantly getting disproven as well. And they know that, and we know that, okay? That's why it's called a theory until it's proven as law, right? We know this, right? Okay, that being said, if you just look at the evidence, you ain't got to go that far deep, right? It almost at this point is common sense. Oh, an atom looks like the solar system. As above, so below. We also know that the deeper that you go into the human atom, the more space it becomes. Ha ha ha. The deeper that you go into space, the more space it becomes. Are we seeing where the parallels are here? I mean, there's a million. I can draw a million of them. Human body, how much percent water? 75%. The earth, how much percent water? 75%. As above, so below. As above, so below. It's constantly being reflected. Hell, you watch Avatar, they talk about the linkage, the interconnected network. I just talked about the World Wide Web. I mean, it's everywhere. It's always paralleled. It's always paralleled because God is that genius. Let's talk about it. Okay, what is the 10-90 rule? That I'm calling it the 10-90 rule. You use 10% of your brain, right? We talked about, if you watch the movie Limitless, you'll understand that he talks about using 10% of your brain. But what if you could access all of it? Accessing all of it is also parallel to the ability to access all of reality, not just physical reality. Well, what other reality is there than physical? We know spiritual, right? Duality. We know that there's two. But spiritual reality and physical reality also exist on more dimensions than just the third dimension, right? Like, this is three-dimensional, but you watching it on the TV screen is actually two-dimensional. Your TV screen is a two-dimensional object, right? What you're looking at is two-dimensional. right? Just 2 dimensions. There's no 3 dimensions because you can't go through it. You cannot go through the TV. Well, I mean, you can, but I'm just taking it too far. I'm taking it too far, metaphysics. Okay, but pretend that you just, you're looking at the regular physical TV. You don't go through it. Then you talk about 3 dimensions. You can actually touch this. You don't go through it, but it's tangible, right? Because you can't touch anything. You don't watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians and go touch a lock of Kim's hair. I mean, that doesn't happen. So because that doesn't happen, we know there are multiple dimensions, right? And how dismissive of us would it be? How self-righteous of us would it be? How egotistical would it be of us to assume that there's just 3 dimensions? Well, what dimension does God exist on? The 4th, the 5th, the 8th, the umpteenth? That's that 90% that we don't know about. That's what I'm talking about. So the 10% we do know about is what we see. We see televisions, we see physical reality, we see light. Right? Quanta. We see quantum physics. What do we not know? 90%. How do we know? How do we know that we don't know 90%? As above, so below. As within, so without. So if you look within, we only use 10% of our brain. We don't access the other 90%. Then we can look at our physical reality. We're using 10% of our reality. There's actually 90% of reality that we don't even know we can access. Quantum physics, multiple realities. You see the linkages? Do you see the parallels? Was it confusing? Guess who should rewind the tape? Because yes, if I'm going to talk about an intricate concept, it doesn't mean that I'm confusing. It just means that if you rewind the tape enough, it'll start to make sense to you, especially after having watched the end of the tape. Woo! I love quantum physics. Woo! Yes, and we understand why we need history. We understand why history is important. As I said, as an African American woman, my ability to reference history now makes me a more complete, more founded, more grounded human being. Doesn't change the fact that I'm African American, okay? Just like if you know the history of your beliefs, it doesn't change your beliefs, it strengthens them.
Today in Vision class, we discussed recovering our sense of connection in the artist's way. We also discussed the tools for activating our visions with prayer and feeling. Join us next week, Friday, August 2nd at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we learn how to use meditation to guide our vision. We will discuss the second half of Gregg Braden's The Isaiah Effect, as well as we will be joined by our field expert, Tay Queen. Make sure to read Week 8 in The Artist's Way, as well as catch up on any and all readings and assignments.
See you next week. We're going to talk to Tay Queen again, because she's going to tell you all about meditation, because I'm not even the expert on that. I really am not. I'm just going to give you generalities, but she's going to really tell you how to meditate, how that's listening. She's also going to tell you how you're accessing God through the listening of the meditation and techniques for doing so. And of course, I'm going to help you to further understand prayer, because you're going to start this week while you have the time off and you're just doing week 7 in Artist Way and you're just doing your Artist Data morning pages. This week, you're going to start praying with feeling, right? The idea is what? To feel your new reality. So if you take your vision and you pray for it as though it exists already, just like they were in the caravan and in their minds, they were already in Cairo. Even though physical time would not allow them to be there, they actually manifested their reality as being in Cairo, right? Or alternatively, you have a vision of living in your new home. Well, you have to feel what the feeling is like to be in that home, right? Even if that means you have to go to a lot of open houses just to feel what it's like to be in an empty home, well, then you go do it. But the idea is the feeling. So when you pray tonight, and we'll talk about it, and we'll talk about it more next week, the technique of how to do it. But when you pray, the idea is to emote the feeling of it already being the way that you want it to be. So you don't just pray words, is what I'm trying to tell you. You don't just sit there and say, God, I want a new car. Amen. No. You now go inward so deep that the feeling of having the car is how you pray. You don't just ask for the car, you feel the car, and in that way, you're praying for the car. Instead of asking, I want X, Y, and Z, take the time now when you're in that state of prayer to feel it. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Peace and peace.